have mercy upon us. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness hast appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men and women, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us, thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in these islands, that thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands, and those whose interests thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ's sake. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Members, House is now in session. Announcements by the Speaker. We've been notified by the following members that they'll be absent today. MP Curtis Dickerson, MP Levita Fogo, and MP Scott Pierman have all sent due notice. Whilst I'm on the announcements, I'm going to call on MP King. MP King, members, there was an incident that took place the last time we were sitting that was most unfortunate, and I'm calling on MP King to give apologies for that incident.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I offer my humblest apologies to this House and to the honorable member, MP Keynes. We discussed the matter, and you can be assured such occurrences will not happen again in the future.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Messengers from the Senate? There are none. Papers and other communications? We have a few this morning. The first is in the name of the Minister of Works, Minister Birch.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the report of the Joint World Heritage Center, ICOMOS, advisory mission to the historic town of St. George and related fortifications, Bermuda, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Education. Minister?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Education,
Yes.
I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Education Primary Schools Implementation of Reforms Order 2024 as made by the Minister responsible for education in exercise of the power conferred by Section 5 of the Education Primary Schools Temporary Act 2023.
With that said, I assume you're going to do the next two for me as well?
I will, Mr.
Continue.
Speaker. On behalf of the Minister of Education, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Education Closure of Schools Order 2024 as made by the Minister responsible for education in exercise of the power conferred by Section 6 of the Education Act 1996.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Education, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Bermuda College audited financial statements for the year ended March 31st, 2024. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sorry about that, members. The next statement, papers and communications rather, from the Junior Minister of Tourism, Culture, and Sport. Junior Minister?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the Tourism Investment Sworn Pyrotechnics Limited Order 2024 proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for tourism under Section 3 of the Tourism Investment Act 2017, together with the written agreement of the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 5 of the Tourism Investment Act 2017.
Thank you. Would you like to introduce the second one?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the House of Assembly the Tourism Investment Rosedon Order 2024 proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for tourism under Section 3 of the Tourism Investment Act 2017, together with the written agreement of the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Section 5 of the Tourism Investment Act 2017.
Thank you. Members, that's the close of the papers and communications for today. The next item on the order paper, petitions. There are none. The next item is the statements by ministers and junior ministers, and we have some 7 statements this morning. The first is by Premier and the Minister of Finance. Premier?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members and the public will be aware of the annual trek to the United Kingdom required of premiers, chief ministers, and other elected leaders to meet with ministers of His Majesty's government for the Joint Ministerial Council. The Joint Ministerial Council, referred to as the JMC, is the highest political forum between the United Kingdom government and governments of the overseas territories. I rise today to share details of this productive trip. Mr. Speaker, the new UK government has stated that it seeks a relationship with its remaining overseas territories that is strong, based on a modern, respectful, and engaged partnership. Over the years, this government has developed a solid foundation with not only UK members of Parliament, but UK senior civil servants. From our continued efforts, the new Labour government are well acquainted with Bermuda's constitutional, historical, financial, and political standing. The UK government recognizes that the relationship between the UK and its overseas territories is an evolving one. As such, in conjunction with colleagues leaders, the government of Bermuda supports a new UK white paper that addresses the advancement of all territory constitutions and recognizes our collective responsibilities as the existing 2012 white paper has reached its maturity. Mr. Speaker, the new UK government has set out 5 principles towards the overseas territories, which I shall cover. First, devolution and democratic authority, establishing clear consistency on constitutional principles of partnership and engagement. Number 2, listening, firmly believing in the principle of, and to quote, nothing about you without you, end quote. The third, partnership, built on mutual respect and inclusion involving all government departments, not just the Foreign, Commonwealth, and Development Office. 4, rights come with responsibilities. Shared values of the British family include a robust commitment to democracy, the rule of law and liberty, and the protection of human rights. And 5th, advancement of good governance, ensuring proper democratic accountability and regulation. Mr. Speaker, I was encouraged by the engagements with the UK government, which included a meeting between overseas territories leaders and the Right Honourable Keir Starmer, Prime Minister, the Right Honourable David Lammy, Foreign Secretary, and Stephen Doughty, MP, Minister of State for Europe, North America, and the overseas territories, who chaired the Joint Ministerial Council. During our interaction, the Prime Minister reiterated his unwavering support for Bermuda and all territories, recognizing the overseas territories' ironclad commitment to democratic autonomy, and the right to self-determination. Mr. Speaker, I held a bilateral with our Minister for the Overseas Territories, Stephen Doughty, in which Her Excellency the Governor was in attendance. I expressed the need for Bermuda to seek clarity on a range of matters. First, and most importantly, the review process for constitutional reform, which is unique to each territory. Second, the support from the UK government on Bermuda's implementation of the Global Minimum Tax Initiative through the introduction of our corporate income tax regime. And third, the shared concern to address the violence facing our communities. Mr. Speaker, I found the minister to be committed to the principles set out, and this has persisted since his time in opposition. Our engagement is longstanding, and I'm confident with the senior minister afforded to Bermuda by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, our priorities will be well represented across all UK government departments. Further, it is worthwhile noting that under Minister Dowdy's leadership, all UK government departments have been assigned a minister with responsibility for the relationship with the overseas territories and meet regularly to address issues important to the OTs. Mr. Speaker, I further held a bilateral with Economic Secretary to the Treasury and City Minister Talik Siddiq MP. Given international business importance to the Bermuda economy, it was important to share Bermuda's progress on the implementation of corporate income tax. Additionally, I reiterated the view that the relationship between the City of London and Bermuda is a symbiotic one that strengthens both sectors. City Minister Siddiq welcomed Bermuda's next phase of our tax regime and was fully aware of the importance of Bermuda's insurance industry to the United Kingdom economy. Mr. Speaker, during the JMC, Minister Stephen Dowdy was joined by Dan Jarvis, MP, Minister of State of the Home Office, to address the Foreign Secretary's campaign to tackle illicit finance. I reiterated Bermuda's position on central registers of beneficial ownership. Bermuda already provides information to relevant authorities. Bermuda has a long-standing commitment to financial transparency, and such, Bermuda and the UK will continue to cooperate, including through technical forums and international fora on anti-money laundering, sanctions enforcement, and all efforts related to tackling illicit finance. Mr. Speaker, I was accompanied to the JMC by the Honorable Member, the Minister for Economy and Labor, as economic development and diversification formed the central theme of the meetings. The Minister for Economy and Labor led the economic diversification session on behalf of Bermuda, and this session was co-chaired by Douglas Alexander MP, Minister of State at the Department for Business and Trade, together with UK export finance officials. Discussions were based upon the promotion and encouragement of trade and investment and partnership, as both are key engines of prosperity. The outcome of our discussion saw commitments by the United Kingdom government to continue to work with Bermuda in the following areas: explore territorial extension of the UK free trade agreements, investment summits with participation from overseas territories, and trade missions to overseas territories. Mr. Speaker, it was imperative that we address issues relating to security. With the Right Honorable Lord Hanson Flint, Minister of State for the Home Office, we were keen to focus on areas which the government requires a more defined approach as the UK's obligations regarding internal security. As such, we agreed for the Home Office to define and articulated its offer regarding continued guidance and support on tackling cybercrime for all territories. This includes a commitment to continue to work with all territories to improve incident management and response. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda, together with all overseas territories, represent 94% of UK's total biodiversity. We represent the largest component of the UK meeting its international conservation obligations. Bermuda is recognized as a steward for internationally important and unique environments and ecosystems. Much of this recognition should be credited to the work of the Honorable Member, the Honorable Deputy Premier and Minister for Home Affairs, and his continued efforts to showcase Bermuda's commitments to addressing the effects of climate change. As a result of this continued advocacy, the following has been agreed to with Kerry McCarthy MP, Minister for Climate at Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. The London office is working together with the FCDO, the UK Department for Environment, the UK Department for Energy, alongside all overseas territories to develop a proposal for an overseas territory climate resilience facility. This work is a result of the Honorable Deputy Premier's tireless engagement at various environmental fora, particularly commitments made at COP29 in Dubai. Mr. Speaker, the public would be keen to know that conversations are also being held to secure commitments relating to education, healthcare, and public health, together with the UK Department for Health and Department for Education. There was a recognition of the crucial role of coordinated health and education support for young people. Together with the London office, in coordination with Bermuda government departments, we will explore with the UK government to review their offer of support in the following areas: opportunities to share experiencing and accessing pharmaceutical supply chains, and support healthcare emergency training such as mental health. Mr. Speaker, while in London, it was important to maximize my time to ensure to meet with key stakeholders from our insurance and reinsurance industry. The first of these meetings were held at Lloyd's of London with CEO Mr. John Neal, including representation from Bermuda's industry, such as the Association of Bermuda Insurers and Reinsurers. I was accompanied by the Financial Secretary, Chidozio Fuego, and Craig Swan, CEO of the Bermuda Monetary Authority. During this meeting, we spoke of the strong partnership between the Bermuda market and Lloyd's of London. A visit would not be complete without visiting a strong supporter of Bermuda's industry, the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey. We discussed developments in the insurance industry and how continued partnership is beneficial to the UK and Bermuda market relationship. Mr. Speaker, apart from the high-level meetings, the highlight of the visit is always the student dinner, which provides an opportunity for those young Bermudians pursuing higher education in the UK to engage directly with both me and others in the public service. This was an inspiring evening due to the talented young Bermudians and their aspirations to contribute to Bermuda in the future. Mr. Speaker, I wish to conclude by noting that this year, the London office is observing 15 years of service to Bermuda. The office, the first of our overseas representations, plays a pivotal role to establishing and representing Bermuda's interests on the international stage. The continued work to uphold Bermuda's diplomatic function and work with the UK government will reaffirm Bermuda's role as a respected voice in the UK and amongst the overseas territories. On behalf of the government, I thank the team of the London office, led by Ms. Kimberly Durant, for the continued stellar service they continue to provide on behalf of the people of Bermuda. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Deputy Premier. Deputy.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to members and the listening public. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to share with this honorable House and the listening public a significant step forward in Bermuda's commitment to addressing one of the most crucial challenges of our time, the impacts of climate change. Mr. Speaker, the world is changing faster than many anticipated. While future generations, our children and grandchildren, will bear the brunt of climate-related impacts, we are already seeing signs of this change here in Bermuda. Recent events have highlighted the unprecedented shifts in our weather patterns and seasonal conditions. For example, September saw the second wettest day on record, contributing to 2023 being the wettest year on record. We are experiencing increased flooding in low-lying areas. The frequency of major storms impacting our region continues to rise, as evidenced by Hurricane Ernesto this summer, Bermuda's 8th direct hit this century. Ocean temperatures and sea levels continue to increase year on year. Mr. Speaker, although Bermuda's contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions is minimal, our vulnerability to the impacts of climate change is significant. As a small island state, our geographic isolation, limited resources, and reliance on critical coastal infrastructure, such as the Elliott Wade International Airport, key roadways, and power systems, place us at heightened risk. Issues such as seawater intrusion, coastal erosion, and storm damage jeopardize our homes, businesses, and economy. Climate change is no longer a distant threat. It is affecting Bermuda today and is projected to continue with potentially far-reaching consequences for all of us who call Bermuda home. We stand at a critical juncture and must act decisively to protect and preserve our island for future generations. Mr. Speaker, in March 2022, I reported to this honorable House that, firstly, the government had commissioned a comprehensive study titled Bermuda and Climate Change, Impacts from Sea Level Rise and Changing Storm Activity, which was to be conducted in collaboration with Smith Warner International and funded by the UK Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, the purpose of which was to assess Bermuda's vulnerabilities to rising sea levels and intensified storm activity. And secondly, the Ministry of Home Affairs had formed an interministerial climate change task force to provide oversight to Smith Warner as they undertook this study. This task force comprised representatives from key ministries and departments, including the Ministry of Home Affairs, which oversees the Department of Energy and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, the Ministry for Public Works, the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Transport, the Cabinet Office, which oversees the Department of Planning, and the Bermuda Weather Service's then director, Dr. Mark Gishard. Dr. Gishard is now the Chief Operating Officer of the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences, but has remained committed to the task force in his new role. And for this, we are truly grateful for his expertise. Mr. Speaker, at the outset of this initiative, the government recognized the importance of a coordinated and strategic approach to effectively tackling climate change. By unifying efforts, we aim to reduce duplication across ministries and other organizations, enhance understanding of ongoing initiatives, and leverage the extensive expertise available across various sectors. I will take a moment to thank the ministries involved, their technical officers, along with Ms. Razia Azar, the former permanent secretary of the Ministry of Home Affairs, for their dedication to this critical project. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to announce that the resulting report and related resources are being shared with the public and is now available on the government portal at gov.bm/climate change. I urge all members of this honorable House and the entire Bermuda public to review the findings of this comprehensive study. There are 4 extensive technical parts to the study, but there is a shorter, more easily readable executive summary of the report that is also available. This is a wide-ranging study, the first of its scale undertaken by the Bermuda government, and one that, thanks to the UK government's commitment to Bermuda as an overseas territory, has not been a drain on our public purse. Mr. Speaker, Smith Warner International, who are based in Jamaica, have extensive experience working in many other small island jurisdictions, including other British overseas territories such as the British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, and Turks and Caicos. They have also previously undertaken similar work in Bermuda. For the Department of Planning in 2004, with their report on coastal erosion, making them an ideal choice to undertake this important work. The Smith Warner International reports provide in-depth analysis, assessment, and understanding of the potential effects of climate change on Bermuda using the latest data available from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and through their own local assessment to do the following: produce a vulnerability index for major infrastructure such as the airport, ports, public highways, electricity generation plant, subterranean utility cabling, the Times Bay incinerator, and sewage management systems. Identify the likely effects of sea level rise from an ecological perspective on Bermuda's waterways, inshore ponds, and marshes. Map projections for inundation, identifying both low-lying coastal areas that will be periodically or permanently inundated by seawater, and low-lying freshwater resources that could be impacted by saltwater intrusion. Identify government infrastructure and facilities located at or close to the shoreline that are at risk for erosion or inundation. Identify agricultural areas vulnerable to seawater inundation and to soil salinization with the context of food security and continued ability to cultivate fields. Update coastal erosion and flood inundation projections for the offshore islands, bays, beaches, and dunes, especially during storms and hurricanes. Understand the effects that coastal erosion and sea level rise will have and their potential impacts on waterfront development. Identify coastal areas prone to hydraulic erosion and or destabilization of the cliff faces for the island shoreline areas, and identify critical infrastructure that will be at risk over the near, medium, and long term timeframes. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the report identifies significant risks for Bermuda's existing built and natural environment, including some 2,130 of Bermuda's buildings, some 6% face some level of risk, with 326 classified as highly exposed. Critical areas, including major roadways, the Belco plant, and the airport, are at risk. A staggering 96% of our coastal reserves require protection. Finally, the report recommends adaptive measures such as shoreline advancement, submerged breakwaters, and land reclamation, which are available and which will need to be undertaken. Whatever of these strategies we undertake, they must, of course, balance protection with the preservation of environmental integrity. Mr. Speaker, to address these risks, we will be establishing an expanded multi-sectoral climate change task force. Given the serious threat that climate change poses to every single person in Bermuda, this task force will include members of the public, private, and third sector. It will be tasked with one, assisting in the creation of a national action plan for Bermuda and prioritizing recommendations for action. Public education and outreach by launching an awareness campaign to foster community understanding and engagement. This would include meetings with stakeholder groups such as the Chamber of Commerce, the construction industry, engineers, surveyors, and environmental groups. Legislative and policy adaptation, ensuring both the Bermuda Plan and the Bermuda Building Codes are amended to include considerations for climate resilience. And fourth, instituting nature-based solutions with continuing investments in ecosystems restoration, such as mangrove and coral reef rehabilitation, which reduce storm surges and erosion whilst also preserving biodiversity. These efforts will be coordinated by a dedicated project manager to provide support and strategic guidance to our interrelated initiatives. Bermuda, Mr. Speaker, has an opportunity to lead by example. As a global hub for climate risk and insurance expertise, we can model resilience and innovation for other small island states. Collaboration at every level will be essential as we work to secure resources and solutions. Mr. Speaker, I again urge all members of the Honorable House and the entire public to read the report. It is available at gov.bm/climate change. There is also a dedicated email, climatechange@gov.bm, for questions and comments. Climate change is a defining issue of our time. By acting now, we can safeguard Bermuda's natural beauty, economy, and way of life for generations to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy. Members, the next statement this morning is by the Minister of Works. Minister.
Good morning again, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
I rise this morning to announce receipt and tabling in this House for the report of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, more commonly known as UNESCO's advisory mission to Bermuda's own World Heritage Site, the historic town of St. George's, and related fortifications. Mr. Speaker, in March, I informed this Honorable House and the listening public that the government had invited representatives of the UNESCO to the historic town to perform an advisory mission for the purpose of 1. Conducting an overall assessment of the town of St. George's World Heritage Site, 2. Review any current or proposed developments in the area, 3. review and advise on the planning, protections, and management measures currently established in legislation and those intended to be, and 4, engage with decision makers and relevant stakeholders involved in the maintenance and preservation of the World Heritage Site. Mr. Speaker, before I continue, I wish to briefly remind of the background for this advisory mission. 24 years ago, after a lengthy concerted effort and application process by local heritage stakeholders in the late 1990s, the historic town of St. George's and related fortifications, approximately 19 different forts, were inscribed as World Heritage Sites by the UNESCO World Heritage Committee in December 2000 and retroactively given the designation of Outstanding Universal Value in 2014. Mr. Speaker, during this inscription process, another piece was added, a World Heritage Site buffer zone. This buffer zone, not including the town itself, protects the town, forts, and spans some 746 hectares or 3 miles, which vastly range from the town itself across to Tobacco Bay, then to the Royal Artillery, or as locals call it, the RA, and then back to the town itself. Mr. Speaker, in 2000, to support and manage the World Heritage Site, a standing body was established known as the World Heritage Committee, which comprised of various local entities, including representatives from the Corporation of St. George's, the Bermuda National Trust, the St. George's Foundation, and other such relevant organizations. This body is supposed to advise the government on recommended management plans and development proposals in the area. However, the committee has not held meetings since the COVID-19 pandemic, attributed to several reasons. Mr. Speaker, since the original inscription, representatives of UNESCO have not visited the town of St. George's, and as we are all aware, times have changed. Mr. Speaker, this legislature and the greater public acknowledges that the former capital is in dire need of an economic revitalization. Hence, the rationale for the government designating the area as an economic empowerment zone, agreeing for a designated NCL ferry during peak season tourists, and other incentives to assist the corporation in driving investment to the town. This attempted revitalization for the town spans successive governments, and both sides of the aisle have demonstrated agreement that the town needs help, although our methods may differ. But regardless of our differences, both the government and the opposition agree that a part of this economic renaissance must involve some sort of development. Anyone who understands basic economics knows that construction helps stimulate growth, and as such, multiple major construction projects have begun over the last decade, such as the St. Regis development and the St. George's Marina project, with the goals of increasing immediate investment in the short term while simultaneously increasing tourism investment in the long term. Mr. Speaker, UNESCO has noticed this change in philosophy for the island and has recently made their position known to the government through several correspondences. Mr. Speaker, to be clear, the advisory mission should not be considered a concerning matter. Rather, the reason for this advisory mission was to allow the government, Corporation of St. George's, and relevant stakeholders to directly discuss the overall direction for the town, address any concerns the entity may have, and seek its opinion on the town. Mr. Speaker, it is advised that overall this report is positive. In terms of legislation and planning tools, the mission noted that the government of Bermuda has a clear and well-defined legal framework for managing change and development, which considers cultural assets of national significance within Bermuda. The mission also found that the overall state of conservation of the town of St. George can be considered particularly good, and that this component, part of the serial property, retains a remarkable degree of integrity and authenticity. These positive aspects of the report can be attributed to this government's recent amendments to and implementation of the St. George's Resort Act 2018, the Development and Planning Act 1974, and the Bermuda Plan 2018. The purpose of which was to do justice in providing complementary legal and/or customary restrictions on use and development within the surrounding area of the town to give an added layer of protection. Mr. Speaker, while the report is positive overall, there are some other matters we can and will improve on. UNESCO recommends 40 different items that the government should consider to bolster our World Heritage Site status. Currently, we are reviewing these recommendations on how to act on each of them. And of course, consultation will occur with various stakeholders outside the government who participate in the town's strategic direction, including those in business, heritage, and environmental spheres, amongst others, many of which have already been provided with a report prior to this statement today. Mr. Speaker, thanks are given to the team of technical officers in both the government of Bermuda, specifically Mrs. Victoria Cordero, Director of Planning, Ms. Jessica Deal, Heritage Officer, and Mr. Kenneth Campbell, Senior Planner. Thanks are also given to our UK counterparts, Ms. Alexandra War and Mr. Henry Reed, who collaborated diligently with the advisory mission team and others to fully contextualize the local matters to ensure all possible preconceived notions and or misunderstandings were addressed. Mr. Speaker, additional thanks are given to our stakeholders such as the Corporation of St. George's, area MPs, and heritage organizations for being part of this process. Mr. Speaker, the World Heritage Site designation is internationally recognized, and we are thankful that UNESCO has provided their opinions on our historic town of St. George's, and we look forward to further improving the historic town and related fortifications. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the the Minister of National Security, Minister Weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to you. Good morning to your listening audience.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, the 2024 annual meeting of the Bermuda Drug Information Network, otherwise known as BRADIN, was hosted by the Department of National Drug Control on November 1st at the Bermuda Underwater Exploration Institute, BUEI. This was the 15th meeting of this information network. Mr. Speaker, the BRADIN is comprised of individuals who either represent themselves or an agency, with the objective of delivering factual, impartial, and comparable information regarding alcohol, drugs, and alcohol or drug addiction in Bermuda, along with their repercussions. The meeting was attended by 31 BRADIN members and invited guests, which included 20 professionals from the Bermuda Addiction Certification Board. This year's meeting was the first collaborative effort between BRADIN and the Bermuda Addiction Certifications Board, BACB. Mr. Speaker, the gathering facilitated discussions and allowed participants to gain insights into the developments that occurred on the island over the past year, presenting a comprehensive overview of the current situation regarding alcohol and drug use in Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, stakeholders attending the meeting represented both governmental and non-governmental agencies, such as the Bermuda Hospitals Board, the Bermuda Police Service, Bermuda Sport, Anti-Doping Authority, Department of Child and Family Services, CARTA, Department of Corrections, Department of Court Services, just to name a few. Mr. Speaker, I, as Minister of National Security, under whose remit the National Drug Control now falls, commenced the event with opening remarks, which were followed by presentations from experts in their respective disciplines. This year's agenda focused on updating members regarding the latest activities and initiatives from agencies involved in both demand and supply reduction efforts. Participants also had the opportunity to hear from an international guest speaker who addressed emerging trends in drug use. Mr. Speaker, there are significant health and safety concerns arising from the misuse of alcohol and drugs that I would like to highlight for your consideration. In the initial presentation led by Mrs. Joanne Dean, the director of the DNDC, the achievements of BRADIN were emphasized and appreciation was expressed to the members for their ongoing support. Key insights were communicated concerning the data outlined in the 10 chapters of the annual report. Notable points included alcohol, cocaine, and marijuana continue to be the three most preferred substances, with users indicating that these substances are easily accessible. A significant number of individuals sought assistance from Turning Point, Salvation Army, and Men's Treatment. A total of 5.5 million liters of alcohol were imported, with a valuation of $30.7 million. This importation generated $19.3 million in custom duties. Additionally, there was a significant increase of 53.9% in the number of individuals who did not pass the breathalyzer test. Mr. Speaker, concluding the presentation, Mrs. Dean addressed the significant data gaps identified in this year's report and the various organizational challenges that agencies have encountered over the past year. Furthermore, she urged the members to persist in their vital efforts to collect high-quality data despite current circumstances. Mr. Speaker, Officer Jermaine Galloway from Texas delivered a comprehensive presentation regarding the latest drug trends observed in the United States, Canada, and now Bermuda. The day before his presentation, Officer Galloway performed an environmental assessment of various local stores to evaluate the Bermuda drug market. Attendees were shown a series of images and videos depicting the different drugs that are appearing in stores across the island, such as kratom, micro jelly, amentia, mascara, shisha, THC, M, THCO products, and Synpacks. These go between the teeth and gums. Mr. Speaker, he also addressed the harmful effects these products could have on our community, particularly in terms of marketing strategies aimed at young people, the high potency of items, and the use of vape devices. Many of the identified items are synthetic cannabinoids or precursors to more potent synthetics that may arrive on island as per the trends in the USA, and many are in bright packaging and flavored, thus potentially attracting our youth. The representative from the Department for National Drug Control, or DNDC, Stephanie Tankard, who serves as the research officer, delivered an update regarding the department's 6 survey initiatives, which included public amenity, treatment demand indicators, consumer experience, employee experiences, stakeholder feedback, and drug abuse monitoring, servicing. A detailed summary was presented regarding this drug abuse monitoring survey. Mr. Speaker, it was emphasized that alcohol, marijuana, and cocaine are the 3 most commonly used substances among people who are sentenced to incarceration. Notably, for the first time, 8 people tested positive for morphine upon reception into the Department of Corrections. Additionally, 12% of inmates upon intake reported using prescribed medication for mental or emotional issues within the last year. Reports of physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, and abandonment before the age of 18 were made by 20 inmates. Furthermore, drugs and alcohol were linked to 23.9% of both current and past offenses, and 14.5% of inmates indicated they experienced an intermediate to severe drug abuse problem. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Celeste Maycock, an emergency room physician, presented a collaborative initiative between the Bermuda Hospitals Board and the Department for National Drug Control. This anonymous study aimed to investigate the types and prevalence of substances consumed by individuals involved in road traffic accidents who sought treatment in the emergency room from May 1st, 2023 to April 30th, 2024. Key findings revealed that out of 167 participants, 16% female, 84% male, aged 16 to 90 years. 119 individuals, or 71%, tested positive for substances. Among these, 53 participants, or 32%, had only alcohol in their system. 32 or 19% had only drugs, and 34 or 20% had both alcohol and drugs in their system. The positive drug test identified substances such as THC, cocaine, methamphetamines, benzodiazepines, and or opiates. Notably, 20% of accidents occurred on Fridays, followed by Saturdays, and a significant proportion of the road traffic accidents were single vehicle incidents, or 62%, predominantly involving motorbike riders, which was 81%. Mr. Speaker, Mrs. Nadine Kirkos, a government analyst at the Department of Health, presented several case studies from the past 2 years in which alcohol and or drugs were possibly related to death. She detailed the analysis of drugs found in toxicology reports and DUI samples. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, following the suspicious deaths of 48 males and 11 females, the substances identified included ethanol, alcohol in 9 cases, drugs in 15 cases, and a combination of both alcohol and drugs in 13 cases. Additionally, there were 22 instances where no substances were found. Among the female cases from 2022, the presence of cocaine, fentanyl, norfentanyl, and morphine was noted in one individual's blood. In the male case study, substances such as sopanim, citalopram, tramadol, oxycodone, and codeine were detected in both blood and urine samples. Mr. Speaker, in contrast, in 2023, the analysis of substances following the suspicious deaths of 51 males and 12 females revealed similar findings. Ethanol or alcohol was present in 9 cases, drugs in 20 cases, and both alcohol and drugs in 5 cases. However, there were 29 cases where no substances were detected. Mr. Speaker, Chief Inspector Robert Cardwell from the Tactical Support Division of the Bermuda Police Service delivered a presentation on the procedure for conducting roadside sobriety checks and the relevant legislation that underpins this practice. He also outlined the legislative amendments he has proposed, which are aimed at enhancing the authority of BPS officers during vehicle stops and addressing public awareness regarding the timing and locations of these sobriety checks. Mr. Speaker, the final presentation of the day was delivered by Dennis Lister III, JPMP, the chairman of the Bermuda Road Safety Council. His presentation centered on the initiatives and strategies aimed at combating impaired and substance-related driving. Mr. Lister highlighted that a significant number of accidents are linked to alcohol or impairment, primarily caused by drunk and or drugged driving, speeding, distracted driving, and reckless behavior. He emphasized the negative effects of impaired driving on our close-knit community and stressed the necessity for behavioral and cultural changes to achieve meaningful progress. Attendees were reminded of the various short and long-term campaigns and initiatives established to tackle impaired driving. In conclusion, Mr. Lister outlined the anticipated outcomes and objectives of the Bermuda Road Safety Council. Mr. Speaker, the 2024 annual report on the Bright-In and all the presentations can be accessed on the government portal. We encourage policymakers, stakeholders, and the community to utilize the data to direct actions and or program development to address any areas of concern. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Education. Minister.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, listening audience. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the establishment of Bermuda College, I'm pleased to lay the 2023-24 audited financial statements before the Honorable House of Assembly. This is in accordance with Section 8.2 of the Bermuda College Act, 1974. Mr. Speaker, I would first like to thank the members of the Board of Governors, the interim president, the new president, the vice president of finance and operations, and all others that worked with auditors to obtain unqualified audited financial statements for the last fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, in the opinion of the Auditor General, these statements demonstrate fairly in all material respects the financial position and results of the college, including operations and changes in net assets and cash flows, in line with public sector accounting standards that are generally accepted in Bermuda and Canada. Mr. Speaker, it is consistent with the Audit Act 1990 and the Bermuda College Amendment Act 2022. KPMG conducted the audit for the Bermuda College in conjunction with the Auditor General. As a result of the strong collaboration between Bermuda College and the Office of the Auditor General, the Bermuda College is current with its annual audits. It is important for engendering public confidence in the financial and other operations of the college, and critical in maintaining accreditation with NICHE, the New England Commission of Higher Education. As reflected by the audited 2024 financial statements, Bermuda College has total assets worth $22.8 million and total liabilities of $17.8 million and no long-term debt. Cash and cash equivalents decreased by 23% to $2.7 million, reflecting the impact of both capital investments made, such as the start of the Tech Hall roof installation, and decreases in amounts due to creditors and accrued expenses. During the period, revenue earned from student fees increased by 3%, and there was a 4% decrease in the government grant. Total revenue decreased by 2% to $20 million. Total expenses also decreased by 2% to $20.5 million. The net result for the period was a deficit of $456,184. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to inform this Honorable House about an important initiative launched by the Bermuda College as it embarks on the preparation for its strategic plan for the period 2025-2030. This process represents a pivotal opportunity for all Bermudians to contribute to shaping the college's college's vision for the future. As the college celebrates its 50th anniversary, 5 decades of excellence and commitment to our community, it seeks to build on its previous achievements by setting a new course for the next 5 years. College President Dr. David Sam has emphasized that this effort is centered on student outcomes and equity, laying a strong foundation for the institution's continued growth. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda College has provided stellar service to Bermuda for half a century and remains steadfast in its mission to ensure its future direction is guided by the voices of the people it serves. To ensure the new strategic plan reflects the needs and aspirations of the people it serves, the college is actively engaging its primary stakeholders, including students, faculty, staff, alumni, and the wider community. The plan aims to address current challenges while seizing emerging opportunities in higher education, positioning the college as a leader in delivering transformative and equitable education experiences. It will also ensure that the college continues to reflect the values and needs of Bermuda's vibrant community. Key elements of the planning process include surveys, gathering input from stakeholders to capture a broad range of perspectives on the community's needs and aspirations, focus groups, hosting discussions with internal and external participants, including representatives from public and private schools, as well as alumni and the wider community to gain deeper insights. Mr. Speaker, the Strategic Planning Committee is chaired by Ms. Nachika Trott and Ms. Alnisha Simmons, and they have underscored the importance of public participation in this endeavor. As Ms. Trott states, quote, "This new plan will guide the college's next steps as an institution for the community, shaping our trajectory for the next 50 years. Her sentiments are echoed by Ms. Simmons, who has called upon all residents to lend their voices to this crucial process. The public is encouraged to participate by completing the survey and it is a URL here that I'll sure to send to all members, which is accessible via the Bermuda College website at www.college.bm. The survey will remain open until December 13th. Mr. Speaker, the strategic plan is not just a roadmap for the Bermuda College, it is a blueprint for the future of higher education in our country. I encourage all members of this Honorable House and indeed all residents of Bermuda to engage with this process and help shape the college's vision for the next chapter in this remarkable journey. All persons interested in additional information can contact Nachika Trott, Interim Assistant to the President for Special Projects at ntrott@college.bm. Mr. Speaker, the tabling of the audited financial statements for the 23-24 academic year reflect the financial position of the college and the operations and investments undertaken during the reporting year, while the launch of engagement for the strategic plan continues to invest human knowledge, capital, and support for the college into its future as we continuously look forward with innovation and intention to sustain Bermuda College for another half century and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of Minister of Health. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. I wish to address the public regarding the confirmation of 2 cases of measles in Bermuda. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, our thoughts are with those infected individuals and their families who received treatment at King Edward the 7th Memorial Hospital and are now at home, and we wish them a swift and full recovery. Mr. Speaker, measles is a highly contagious disease, but I want to reassure the public that the Ministry of Health, under the guidance of the Chief Medical Officer, is taking all necessary precautions and measures to contain the situation and prevent further spread. Protecting the public's health is our top priority, and that is why, upon confirmation of these cases, the following action plan, Mr. Speaker, was immediately implemented. First, contact tracing. Through our public health team, we have launched a comprehensive contact tracing exercise to identify and notify individuals who may have been exposed to the affected cases. Those identified are being monitored and, where appropriate, offered post-exposure preventative treatment. Where relevant, those persons have been excluded from school and workplaces, and we urge those persons to heed the advice of the Ministry of Health. These measures are vital to reduce the spread of this disease and protect your fellow family, friends, and neighbors. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, increasing public awareness. We have launched clear guidance on symptoms, prevention measures, and what to do if exposed. This is being communicated through multiple channels, including social media, community organizations, and healthcare providers. Thirdly, we are boosting vaccination drives for the public. We are renewing efforts to offer the life-saving measles, mumps, and rubella, or the MMR, vaccine in the community. Vaccination clinics have been bolstered and expanded to ensure all eligible residents, particularly children and unvaccinated adults, can access the vaccine. For those who may have missed a dose or want to catch up on their immunizations, vaccines are available to all eligible children and adults at the Hamilton Health Center, as well as private doctors' offices. Fourth, Mr. Speaker, we are working in close collaboration with healthcare providers. We are working closely with them across practices in Bermuda to ensure rapid identification, testing, and isolation of any suspected cases so we can quickly take action if needed. And finally, safe infection control measures are being upheld and reinforced. In settings such as schools, workplaces, and healthcare facilities, infection control measures are being strengthened to minimize the risk of further transmission. This involves measures to cover coughs and sneezes, wash hands, and disinfect surfaces. The Ministry of Health has provided clear advice through the Ministry of Education to school administrators. While measles is preventable through vaccination, it is critical that we remain vigilant. Mr. Speaker, current statistics show that Bermuda has fallen well below the WHO's recommended rate of 95%, which is required to achieve herd immunity and eliminate measles. Vaccination rates for children, who are the most susceptible, currently sit at less than 40%. I know. The outcomes, if measles is contracted, can be dangerous, with severe complications such as blindness, diarrhea, and breathing problems from pneumonia, which can result in hospitalization. Complications are most common for babies and young children under the age of 5 years old. So I encourage all residents to verify their vaccination status and ensure that they are up to date. A reminder to all is that once you have had the MMR vaccination against measles, you do not need to do this again. If you are unsure of your vaccination status, please contact your healthcare provider. Mr. Speaker, symptoms of measles include fever, cough, runny nose, red eyes, and a characteristic rash. If you or a family member experience these symptoms, please stay home and contact a healthcare professional for advice before visiting a clinic or a hospital to reduce the risk of exposure to others. And for those who are planning to travel, you should be vaccinated against the measles at least 2 weeks before international travel. If your trip is less than 2 weeks away and you're not protected, you should still get at least one of the doses, the first dose of the MMR. Mr. Speaker, it is important to protect our communities to prevent the spread of easily preventable diseases like measles. And so to increase immunization rates, the ministry will be looking to develop a targeted immunization strategy in the new year. Bermuda has faced public health challenges before, and together as a community, we will look after each other to manage this one. The Ministry of Health will continue to provide regular updates and guidance as this situation evolves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the final statement this morning is in the name of the Junior Minister. Junior Minister of Finance.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, colleagues, and indeed listening audience. Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to update this honorable House on the government's mortgage guarantee program, the latest developments in its expansion, and our broader efforts to make home ownership more affordable for Bermudians. Mr. Speaker, the Mortgage Guarantee Program is a key initiative of this government, designed to support Bermudians in achieving the dream of home ownership. Whether they are first-time buyers or existing homeowners seeking more favorable mortgage rates, this program addresses the challenges many face in accessing affordable financing. Since its launch, I am proud to report that 52 individuals and families have become first-time homeowners or have been pre-approved and are awaiting the opportunity that best suits their needs. Mr. Speaker, these are real, hardworking Bermudians who once believed home ownership was out of reach, but now have a place to call their own. The impact of this program is profound. With a 5% interest rate, families with a $600,000 mortgage can save over $550 per month, while those with $1 million mortgage can save over $700 a month. These savings are more than numbers. They represent tangible relief for families, allowing them to invest in their futures, contribute to the economy, and over time, build long-term wealth. It is also worth noting that to date, all mortgages under this program are current and in good standing. This demonstrates that when we alleviate financial pressures, Bermudians are up to the task, can meet their obligations, and build stability. But Mr. Speaker, our work does not stop there. Phase 2 of the program has revealed specific challenges for public officers in what we refer to as special group services, including police officers, firefighters, and prison officers. It has been brought to our attention that due to their earlier retirement age, these individuals often face difficulties qualifying for the program. After listening to their concerns and holding discussions with Bermuda Commercial Bank, I am pleased to announce that effective January 1st, public officers in these groups may have their retirement age considered as 65, subject to the individual's ability and willingness to work beyond their profession's standard retirement age and the bank's standard lending criteria. This change ensures that these critical workers, those who protect and serve our community, can access the same benefits as others, with the aim of making home ownership more attainable for them and their families. Mr. Speaker, another priority of this government has been to encourage greater competition in the local banking sector. Competition benefits customers, ensuring they have access to the best possible terms and rates. To this end, we have implemented and discussed measures to make transferring mortgages more affordable. Last year, we amended legislation to eliminate stamp duty on mortgage transfers for amounts under $1 million. Building on that initiative, I, along with the Ministry of Finance, recently met with the heads of HSBC, BCB, Butterfield, and Clarion, and am pleased to report that each of these banks have affirmed their willingness to include legal and closing costs within the loan when transferring a mortgage, subject to the respective bank's approval. This means Bermudians can transfer their mortgage to another bank without incurring any stamp duty and without paying out of pocket for legal and other associated costs. Mr. Speaker, I encourage all Bermudians to explore their options when it comes to their mortgage. Shop around, compare rates, and negotiate with their current lender. One Bermudian recently shared with me how, after being offered a better rate elsewhere, their original bank chose to match the offer rather than lose their business. This is a powerful example of the benefits of competition and a reminder that being proactive can result in significant savings. Mr. Speaker, home ownership is about more than financial security. It represents stability, a sense of belonging, and a place to build dreams. This government understands that, and through the Mortgage Guarantee Program and other efforts to enhance competition in banking, we are showing Bermudians that we are committed to their financial well-being. We remain dedicated to prudently removing barriers and creating pathways to home ownership, reducing the financial burden for families and ensuring that more Bermudians have the opportunity to own a home. To those who have taken their first steps towards home ownership and those still seeking better mortgage rates, I say this: your government is here to support you. We are building a Bermuda where opportunities abound, where financial relief is achievable, and where home ownership is no longer a distant dream, but a tangible reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Senior Minister. Members, that brings us to a close of the statements by ministers and junior ministers for this morning. We'll now move on. Reports of committees? There are none. That'll take us to question period. Before we start the questions this morning, I'd just like to acknowledge that we actually have written questions this morning, which are all seek oral responses, and then we'll do the questions that have arisen from the statements today. So the first is a written question from the opposition leader to the Minister of Economy and Labor. You have 3 questions. So Minister, okay. All right, once the Minister, okay. And opposition leader, your questions are seeking oral response, and the Minister will provide responses in just a minute. Okay, we will now start the session. Opposition leader, put your question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, colleagues and listening audience. My questions are to the Honorable Jason P. Hayward, Minister of Economy and Labor. And will the Honorable Minister please provide this Honorable House with a detailed description of the Bermuda Government Ministry of Economy and Labor Immigration or Emigration Survey 2024?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the project was commissioned to a local research firm. The local research firm will conduct a series of interviews. They will conduct interviews with individuals who have emigrated Bermuda. They will conduct interviews with the local population as it pertains to their desire to emanate, or whether or not that is actually an option. For those persons who have emigrated, they will conduct interviews to see what were the push and pull factors surrounding their decision to actually emigrate. That work is ongoing.
Here. So supplementary.
Yes, thank you. We, the opposition has received a copy of what looks like an online survey. And would the minister explain how the interview process works, especially since he mentioned an interview process and an online survey. Can you just describe a little bit more detail between the two?
So there's a multiple prong approach. The survey is only one aspect of the actual data gathering that the company will do. So there is a broad-based survey to get a general appetite of the public. Persons have been floating around that one survey said that 75% of the Bermudian population is considering leaving. We have to get down to the accuracy of the 75%, but not just 75%, what are the factors around their decision making. If you ask an individual whether or not they've thought about leaving Bermuda, I think you may get 100% response that at some point in time, somebody's thought about leaving Bermuda. But whether or not it was a temporary or for a full-time basis, whether it be for education or just upskilling or just for new experiences. And so what we're trying to get to the facts around is the appetite for the population in terms of emigrating. And if one says that I am considering earnestly emigrating, understanding what are the factors that are driving that person to that decision. There may be some factors that we can live with based off of opportunity or education, or just simply Bermuda not being a big enough place to reside and the world being somebody's oyster. But if it is the factors where people are feeling forced and pushed out of Bermuda, then certainly we want to understand the specifics behind those factors so that we can put effective policies in place to retain as much Bermudians as we possibly can.
Thank you. Is there a second? Excuse me, supplementary? Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the minister about sort of remote working and whether the Department of Immigration has noticed a trend of Bermuda companies that are allowing for more remote working, and whether that remote working is a direct incentive for Bermudians to then leave the island because they can continue to work for a local company while they live overseas.
Mr. Speaker, I'll be guided by you, but I don't think that is directly associated with the questions, the line of questions that were asked.
You saw me sort of lean to your lad. I was trying to see if it fitted in. I noticed it's more on the survey, and would that have fallen in the survey? I'm not sure. So it wouldn't have fallen in the survey in a sense.
I don't think specifically remote work would have been a factor that we're considering.
Yeah, even though it's a good question, it doesn't fall in what's on the statement, because the statement referred to more of the contents of the survey was targeting. Okay. Supplementary or new question?
Yes, please. Supplementary.
Okay.
Would the honorable minister be able to speak to the distribution process, how this survey has been distributed?
So there are 3 tours. There will be a survey of 400 households. 400 households is a relative sample size to get a stratified, accurate estimate of the feeling of the population. Most of our surveys are based on household size of 400 to get as much accurate information as we possibly can, as long as the survey is actually stratified, meaning capture people at different income levels and geographic locations within the country. Then there will be 100 in-depth interviews, and then there will be interviews for persons who have actually emigrated. And then based off of those factors, what we're going to do is break it down further and then have in-depth interviews around those factors. So we want to see if the hypothesis holds in terms of some of the assumptions that we're making as to why people leave. And when we identify that those are reasons, then have further in-depth conversations with persons who have actually left Bermuda around those particular areas to see where we can get the best policy solutions.
Those are 2 supplements. Would you like to move on to question number 2?
Thought there was 3. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the honorable minister provide to this honorable house the results of the survey? Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Economy and Labor is not in possession of the results.
Supplementary?
Well, thank you. When the Ministry of Economy and Labor gets the results, will the ministry table them in this honorable house?
Minister.
It is my aim to share with this honorable house the results of the survey. I cannot say that I can table the results as provided because I don't know what format they will actually be received by the ministry, but certainly I'll provide the public with a policy document which will give a clear indication of what the survey results actually were and the policy direction that the government will be moving in based off of those particular results.
Thank you.
Second.
Yep.
Second supplementary, will the raw data be available either via PADI or another mechanism for people who use demographics in Bermuda?
Minister.
That's a difficult question because I'm not clear on the level of detail that the Ministry of Economy and Labor will receive from the firm. And so based off of the report, that will be the level of detail that the government will actually receive. And so I can't speak to the raw data, and the company's data will be outside of the realm of petty.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, third question. Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Thank you. Will the Honorable Minister please specify for this Honorable House the cybersecurity mechanisms and personal information arrangements used to protect the results of this survey?
Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Economy and Labor is not in possession of any of the personal information of the survey respondents. And so, like I said, we will be receiving a report, and there is no cybersecurity or personal data protection that will be required from the Ministry of Economy and Labor standpoint.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Honorable Minister clarify the statement that the Ministry of Economy and Labor is not in possession of any sensitive information because this information was sent out to specific people at a specific time based on certain criteria? So if he doesn't have that information, where did he get the information? I'm just trying to make sure that the information is protected by the government. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, we commissioned a firm. The firm has their own repository of information. We have persons who provide surveys in this country on an ongoing basis, and they have a repository of information that they utilize. That has nothing to do with the government. The government commissioned the firm to provide us with results, and I have articulated the way in which they aim to get those particular results. And so the Ministry of Economy and Labor will not be in possession of any personal details of any of the survey respondents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Ministers, thank you. Minister and Opposition Leader, thank you for your participation. The next written question this morning is from the Opposition Whip to the Minister of Works. Opposition.
Yes.
Mr. Whip.
Good morning, colleagues, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. First question. Will the Honorable Minister please confirm for this Honorable House if all rental units at the former Bermuda Beach Resort will have their own assessment numbers?
Mr. Speaker?
Yep.
Yes.
Supplementary? No supplementary? Second question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Second question. Will the Honorable Minister please provide to this Honorable House, Will the Honorable Minister please confirm for this Honorable House if all rental units at the former Bermuda Beach Resort are to expect a parking bay, and will guest parking be available as well?
Minister?
No.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker? No, I cannot confirm that. The process for allocating parking is something that's being discussed with the Department of Planning. There was not an original plan to provide parking for all 94 units, and so we're working through that.
Supplementary?
Yeah, supplementary. Can the honorable minister take it upon himself once he gets an idea to update the House on that?
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister.
The only one that gives updates.
Second sub or third question?
Third question.
Go ahead. Members? Members?
Will the honorable minister please confirm for this honorable House if he will be willing to table and release the Ernst & Young report he has received containing recommendations for the former Bermuda Beach Resort?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I've already indicated publicly that I will not be releasing the report. The document is an analysis of various options, and we have already released the full contents of the report and outcome to the public. As it contains detailed commercial analysis of the Hilton brand and EY's methodologies, it would not be appropriate to share such information in the public domain. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Yeah, supplementary. I just want to make sure the honorable minister said that he gave to the public full details, but then he's saying that he's not going to release the report. So is the honorable minister saying that when he gave the full details, he read the whole report out?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the recommendations of the report have been provided in the public domain. The work that EY did in order to create that report and the people that they spoke with and the information that they gathered is not germane to the recommendations that they made to the government and the government acted upon. And so that information will not be released into the public.
Okay, that's it. That's it. Thank you. Members, that's the conclusion of the written questions for this morning. We'll now move on to the statements. Of the statements that were given this morning, members have questions for two of the statements. The first is for the Minister of National Security. Minister, you have a statement. You have a opposition whip would like to put a question to you regarding that statement.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to the public as well. In the statement that the honorable minister gave, he indicated that in 2022, there were 59 deaths, I guess, resulting from substances involved. And then there was an increase in 2023 of 63. Were there in this meeting, which I want to thank the minister for bringing this statement to the House, were there any indications that the trend for 2024 was up or growing?
Minister?
In answer to that question, Mr. Speaker, no.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yeah, supplementary. Do we have any data for prior to 2022 on the same matter?
I would say yes, Mr. Speaker, because this meeting is a 15-year annual meeting. I didn't have that data in this particular ministerial statement.
Second sub or second question?
Second sub. Yeah,
Okay.
considering that he said yes, that data is available, is he aware of the results of the same subject matter that we're talking about prior to 2022 of the deaths involving substance abuse?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, that information is not in this current ministerial statement, but if the honorable member needs an information, I have no problem providing it to him.
Thank you. Second question.
Yes. Second question. On page 3, Ms. Dean can be quoted as saying, despite current circumstances, referring to data gap, can the minister explain to us exactly what she's referring to? She encourages to get more data in, but I'm not sure exactly when she says despite current circumstances. It seems that data is not coming in. If he can expound on that.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, when Ms. Dean, the director of BNDC, talks about data gap, it's because the we have collaborating with so many different organizations, the data doesn't always get in on time. So that data gap is simply not that it will not be collected, but because it's so the vastness of the collaboration, it takes time for her to be able to co-lead it.
Thank you. That was your first question on
Supplement? Supplemental?
supplement.
Yeah.
Your first question on the first supplement on the second
That
question.
question, yes. So during the discussions then, did the minister come away believing that we might have found a solution, or was there several solutions to identify how they're going to fill that gap?
Minister?
Yes.
Second sub?
Can the honorable minister expound on that? Yes. Please do. Oh, mercy. Yeah, considering the answer we just received, yes. Would the honorable minister be in a position to expound on that? Yes.
Mr. Speaker, in the very near future.
A future statement. Okay. Is there a third question? Third question? Mr. Ritt? No, okay. No? All right. Moving on. Okay. The next statement that has questions this morning is from the statement by the Minister of Health. Minister, the opposition whip would like to put questions to you regarding that.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Considering the severity of and the impact potentially on Bermuda, it's just curious as to when the minister said that at this present time our children are about 40% vaccinated for measles, and that the current statistics fell below the WHO's recommendation of 95%. I'm assuming that the 95% meant in total, children and adults. I wasn't quite sure. So could the honorable minister give us a reasoning as to why she believes we're so low in comparative to the WHO's recommendations?
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the honorable member for his question. That 95% recommendation from the WHO is with respect to all persons, adults and children, so that we can receive herd immunity. With respect to the low uptake that we're seeing right now, there's a myriad of reasons. Unfortunately, fake information, fake news on social media and the like could contribute to that. I think what's of more importance is that we need to concentrate our efforts on trying to reverse that trend and ensure that persons are well educated and informed as to the need for immunization, particularly against a disease that is completely preventable. So we will continue, as I indicated, to increase our efforts and provide further education through our medical facilities and the like, so that we can encourage everybody to get immunized, because this is truly a preventable. The last case that we had was in the 1990s. So it's unfortunate that we're here, but I think that we can arrest this by making sure that persons do what they need to do, which is immunization. Thank you.
Yeah. Supplementary? Second question. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we indicated, we have communicated through the Ministry of Education with the private and public schools to ensure that they are aware of the challenge that we face. They will also, in turn, communicate that information to their parents. But in addition to that, we are continuing our guidance regime as it relates to utilizing social media, the press, et cetera, every avenue that we can to ensure that persons are well informed as to how to address this preventable disease. And we will, again, in the new year, continue focusing our efforts on further education and immunization. However, persons can become immunized right now through the Hamilton Clinic as well as their doctor's offices.
Supplementary?
Yes, supplemental. Considering the severity and the challenge that this could propose, I recognize this is not an easy thing, or it is a challenge for us. With the honorable minister, I believe we need to do something jointly. It would be nice to see that we work together on this here to make sure that we get our immunization, vaccination up to the numbers that it should be. Would she consider, or would she allow me to work with her on joint effort to get this message out?
Mr. Speaker, I applaud the honorable members. Thank you, Jester. I'm doing it, but I'm not saying it. Jester, Jester, to assist with respect to this, and we will certainly be able to do that. And perhaps we can do something jointly just to ensure that we get more members of the public to become on board. And thank you for that.
Thank you. Any additional question? None? Members, that brings us to a close of the question period for this morning. We'll now move on, and the next item on the order paper this morning is congratulatory and or obituary speeches. Would anyone wish to make a contribution? None? MP Swan? MP Swan, you have your 3 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've got a number of condolences that I would like to offer, starting off with the passing of Mr. Quentin Butterfield in his 99th year, who I was looking forward to celebrating his 100th early in the new year at the celebration of the centenary of Mrs. Fubler. He was there in good spirits, talking about football and his PHC years when he was outstanding. And his son shared a photo when he was a youngster, and his father was one of the legends of one of the PHC giant teams of yesteryear. Mr. Speaker, condolences to his family. Also, condolences to the Anderson family from St. George, who are engaged in a funeral service at this moment, but I'm asking for condolences to be expressed to Ms. Velma Anderson on the passing of her husband, Louis Anderson, who is the uncle of MP Renee Ming, who's at a funeral right now with family members. So they've had a series of tragic passings in that family of recent. So I ask condolences be sent to the family. To the family of Mr. Damian Simmons, whose mother is a constituent, Ms. Dawn Henley, and father is a very good friend, Mr. Phil Parenchif.
You're associating yourself.
And I'll associate myself with those condolences. And also to Mr. Kenny B. Brangman, a caddy from Mid-Ocean Club, who I've known all my life from the West End. Kenny B. comes from Somerset, and they had other nicknames for him, but growing up in Somerset, I knew him as Kenny B. And Lauren Gilbert from St. George, who hails also from West End roots as well. And finally, my good friend Stanford Bradshaw, and the Honorable Zane De Silva would like to be associated with that, a hospitality industry giant from the days when the Southampton Princess, which is being restored, was in its heyday back in the day. You couldn't go to the touch or the half and half without going through Stan. And it was certainly iconic days of entertainment that we hope to see once again. But may he rest in peace, and to his entire family, very much a sporting family, the Bradshaws, his sister and his brothers, and all of them are very well known.
Thank you, MP. Does any other member wish to make a contribution? Minister, Deputy Premier?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for recognizing me. I would like to congratulate the BUEI organization for what I consider to be a successful youth climate summit held last week. They have done this for the past 4 years, and I believe have done an excellent job with attempting to get young people involved with the conversation about the environment and climate. Most of our, if not all of our schools participate at some level. My attendance there, and I've attempted to be involved every year they've had it, and I saw students working together from every school in the island, which is a wonderful experience to witness, with all having some keen interest in climate. Perhaps some of them come because there are incentives to be there, with getting their community hours and other things. But what I saw were young people genuinely interested in the issue of their environment and their community. And anyone who can accomplish that, I believe, should be given proper tribute. And also, a number of young people got awards for their own ongoing efforts to work in the environment with cleanups and other activities as well. A number of young people got awards, and they're like building up quite a impressive young alumni around activities around taking care of Bermuda's environment. Also, I would like to congratulate a young man who was recently awarded a Rhodes Scholarship, Jaden Parker, the 2025 Rhodes Scholar, um, a former student of War Academy. He, I would primarily, not only that, obviously he and his family should be congratulated, but also he does seemingly have a keen interest in the environment. And one thing I'm very interested in ensuring that young Bermudians who have an interest in the environmental sciences, biologies, and ocean sciences, they should be the future leaders within the space as Bermuda continues to need to do things in relation to the protection of our environment and our biodiversity. I look forward to seeing young scientists and researchers to succeed the team that's already here and all the persons who are already committed to that. So I'm glad to see we are developing young leaders in this area. So just hats off to Mr. Parker and those who have helped him get to where he has gotten, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. MP Wade, Simmons Wade.
There were a mistake. Good morning, everyone, to the listening audience. Initially, I'd like to give my condolences to Curtis Dill. Curtis was a resident of Summerhaven, 65 years old. Yeah, associated members. 41 years ago, he got in a bike accident. He acknowledged he was drinking. He acknowledged he was using drugs. That still actually applies today with a number of people who are out there drinking, smoking, etc. But he used this as an opportunity to share with people what they should do and what they shouldn't do. He was a younger man of great courage. 41 years, he was paralyzed from the neck down. He lived, and he was a great inspiration to able-bodied and disabled-bodied people. What he would say when he spoke to young people: I have a good life, but I have a very challenging life. You have decisions to make when you drink, when you drive, when you smoke. You will end up maybe dead, but you will also end up possibly relying on people for the rest of your life. I also will take this opportunity to give birthday wishes, which I do, and I encourage my fellow members to do as well, to recognize seniors. I seem to find that my list is getting longer and longer. I have Ian Boatman, who's 80, Joseph T., who's 80, Ansley Seed, who's 70, Cummings Zool, who's 85, Gail Miller, who's 65, Mildred Bryden, who's 90, Daniel Vickers, who's 80, Mansfield Armstrong, who's 70, Dorothy Nams, who's 87, and Rose Ann Robinson, who's 65. Our seniors are living longer, and as I said, I encourage everyone to recognize their seniors in their constituency and at least give them kudos for being here and contributing to this island and this country, because what will happen, most of them don't get kudos after 65 and 70. And I think most people, including my constituents, are very appreciative to hear their names being called and given birthday wishes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. MP Simmons, Jamal Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise with a heavy heart. I'm deeply saddened by the sudden passing of young Miss Sierra Brangman, a young woman of extraordinary promise whose light was extinguished far too soon. Mr. Speaker, I first met Sierra when I was Minister of Tourism, and she would come because she was interested in some of the work that the BEDC was doing. And she shared her story and told me about how her life, and she had been through so much at a young age. But the intellect, the curiosity, the social conscience were there. And I saw a bright future for her. And she went on to form an organization called Purple Mint, which was a youth organization based out of London with many Bermudians involved that dealt specifically with mental health issues and the challenges that young people face, and trying to create a safe space for people of her age and her generation to be able to speak frankly and have support about mental health challenges, about stress, about the things that were bringing them down. And I had the opportunity to speak to this group over Zoom once as well, because they really wanted to be able to be heard and not just seen as, well, you can't vote, you don't matter. And I think it was very important. I was glad for the opportunity to do that. Mr. Speaker, the last time we spoke, just a few months ago, we talked about life and its challenges. And we used to communicate over WhatsApp. And as I said goodbye to her, I said, look, no matter how low you go, I want you to never forget that you are here for a purpose. You touch and inspire so many, and you bring a lot of goodness and light into this world. Be encouraged, and if ever I can help, never hesitate to reach out. Mr. Speaker, she did bring a lot of goodness and light into the world, and I'm deeply saddened that that light has been extinguished. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I believe she is a former youth parliament member as well. Yes. MP Caesar? Minister Caesar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning I bring condolences to a couple of my constituents, namely Enid Maud Wilson. I bring condolences to her family, mother to Milton Eugene White, Ciola Wilson, and the late Chaser Jones. I also bring my condolences for another constituent, the family of Esther Catherine Bean, the wife of Dr. Gerard Bean, and mother to Michelle and Dr. Monique Bean. Okay, thank you. I associate those who have mentioned. I also, a good friend of mine, or two good friends of mine who I grew up with, Andrea Rattery and Mandy Ingham. I bring my condolences with regard to the passing of their mother, Miss Claire Ingham. I would like to express my sincere condolences to them. Another constituent has passed in my constituency, Miss Frances Eileen Goodchild, and I bring up 16 Jennings Bay Road. She was predeceased by her husband, and she was in her 99th year. And her husband was Mr. Stanley Goodchild, who happened to be my father's godfather. I think that's it. And then, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to bring condolences to my family on the passing of Miss Sylvia Eloise Wilson Smith, née Riley. She's of the Caesar clan of Somerset. She and I associate Minister Wilson as well. She most recently was well known as the taxi operator of T1489 and later T1091. She buried her husband, who predeceased her, Gary, earlier this year, and she leaves to mourn my cousins, Mr. Greg Wilson and Angela Sumner, her stepchildren, Anathias Smith and Anastasia Burgess, many of my other cousins. She's well known in the Somerset area and obviously internationally as well, because she was a taxi driver, had made many good relations with people overseas. And then I would like to finish on a lighter note by saying congratulations to my first cousin, Mr. Connor Smith, who was celebrating his Rhode Island Football Club's first trophy in their inaugural season, which they did very well, although they lost, and after having made it to the finals, they played a team that had been in that league for over 10 years, but they did very well. And so I send my congratulations to him.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy to Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to send condolences to the family of Lewis Anderson. I know MP Kim Wilson not Wilson, Swan. Lewis was a personal friend of mine, and it's a big loss to his family, his 4 children and his wife, and the rest of the family. And as it was mentioned, yes, he's the uncle of Renee Ming. He certainly would be sorely missed by his family. Also, Mr. Speaker, would like for this House to send condolences to the family of Joe Johnson. Joe Johnson was a very affable person, so easy to talk to, approach. I think I probably met him in maybe an arbitration. He was probably an arbiter or something, but he was one that even from that, we always, when we saw each other, we stopped and we talked. So we certainly would like to send condolences to his family. And also as to Ms. Ingham, Manders Ingham's wife, Augustus Ingham, I'd like to send condolences to her and be associated with the remarks of Kenneth Gobble Brangman. I know him Gobble from Napton Hill, not from Somerset. His family came from Somerset, but he came from Napton Hill. He went Harrington Son. Yeah, yeah. So I know, and also I like to be associated in the remarks that of Celia Wilson's mother, Miss Wilson, Mr. Speaker, and Curtis Deal, another one from Harris's Bay. Curtis Deal, I'd like to be associated with those remarks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy. Opposition Whip.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wanted to give congratulations to Winifred Lynch, who celebrated her 100th birthday on November the 13th. I know that and associate the Premier because I know that he had gone to the celebration for her 100th birthday. It seems that we're getting more and more of those. So I'm not sure if it's the synthetic drugs that we have that's helping or the good eating that they have from young. But the good.
What it is.
Yes. Now, we don't want to turn this into a battle. I knew I shouldn't have brought the Premier into this. But yes,
then he took the bait.
Yes. But I would like to just congratulate the family and herself. 100 years is quite a feat. In fact, in passing, I saw the former Sir John Swan, not the former Sir John Swan, but Sir John Swan, in politics. But no, I said sir. I said sir. He was even saying that his goal is to be 100. So in his 90th year. So again, to the Winifred Lynch family, just congratulations to her on achieving that 100th birthday.
Thank you. MP De Silva.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I see you've restarted the clock. I thought Mr. Cunningham might take advantage of that nonstop. But Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate a young 10-year-old young lady by the name of Aubrey Burgess Davis. She was recently made prefect and also Blue House captain at Harrington Sound School. This young lady is none other than the great-grandchild of Mr. Derek Vaughan Burgess. So when I say great, I mean the great and another great. Mr. Speaker, I declare my interest on this one. I'd also like to congratulate Mr. Colin Harper, also known as Collie Butts. You will remember last year, Mr. Speaker, he was nominated for a Grammy, of which he was one of a team. This year, he's been nominated for a Grammy for his album alone, which is a huge feat. And last year was the first for a Bermudian. This is definitely the first and best for a Bermudian. So I do congratulate my son-in-law. I wish he'd teach me how to understand some of the songs he sings, but maybe that will come in time. Mr. Speaker, whilst I'm on my feet, I would like to also congratulate the Western Division of the Parks Department. Mr. Speaker,
many of our civil servants catch a lot of flack over the course of a year from many different angles and many different people. I leave Somerset early mornings, and anyone that leaves Somerset and heads to town, they might have noticed in recent weeks, like 6:30, 20 to 7, this division is not only on the post, but working. I mean, they got machines, lawnmower machines, they got the full landscape gear going, Mr. Speaker, working. And I just thought that they should be congratulated, Mr. Speaker. Whilst I'm congratulating some of our civil servants, I would also like to flick over a little bit and congratulate the Bermudian security staff at the airport. Mr. Speaker, you will know we all travel. The staff at the airport, and now just be clear, I'm talking about the Bermudian security staff. I'm not talking about the U.S. Department. The folks that get up early in the morning to do that for us, Mr. Speaker, yes, they get paid. But I think many of them are very pleasant for that hour of the morning, and they really do take care of not only us as Bermudians, but our tourists. So I would like to thank them for the great job, the dedication, hard work that they do. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you. Does any MP Lister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to the listening audience and to my fellow colleagues. I would just like to start off by sending condolences to a few constituents of mine, Mr. Speaker, to Mr. Earl Iris of 7 South Breeze Road in Warwick, and associate MP Richardson. Also to Mrs. Linda Ann Lottimore, the family of Miss Linda Ann Lottimore of 17 Bayfield Road. I'd like to send condolences. And Mr. Speaker, I also like to send condolences to the family, which is also my family, of Mrs. Marlene Swan that passed recently of 92 Wellington Road. She was a associate MP Swan, and I associate the St. George's MPs also. While she did live in St. George's, she is from Warwick, Mr. Speaker, and she is a cousin of my grandmother. So, you know, even if you end up in St. George's, you do start in the Western area, Mr. Speaker. So yes, I'd like to send condolences to the family, to the rest of the family of the Swan and Ringgood family, Mr. Speaker. And then on a lighter note, I'd like to follow in the steps of my other colleagues in congratulating some centenarians. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to send birthday congratulations to Mrs. Eleanor Dillis, a constituent of mine, celebrated her 103rd birthday yesterday. But more than just a constituent, Mr. Speaker, she was the talk shop lady at Bermuda Institute the many years I went there, and she is more effectively known as Mama D. And anyone that you mention that name, first thing that comes to mind, the scooter pies, but also the pizza pies, Mr. Speaker. I mean, and I think about them, they were macaroni pizza pies that were about 2-3 inches thick, and you don't get those no more, Mr. Speaker, but that was a specialty that she created and will always long live in the memory of any person that attended Bermuda Institute during her time there. So I'd like to send congratulations to her on her 103rd birthday, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. MP Terrell, Government Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I'd like to be associated with the condolences sent to the family of Quentin Butterfield, especially as Quentin and my father-in-law, Bussy Butterfield, were a strike force in their football team, so they have to be mentioned. I wouldn't call the names of the teams, but they were the strike force. And as I do, PHC and Key West Rangers, don't worry. But I would also mention as well that Quentin is my wife's was my wife's godpa, so I had to associate myself with that in his 99th year. I would also like to be associated with the condolences to the Bean family for the passing of Esther Bean, whose husband, Dr. Gerard Bean, and I ran football for a very long time together, and so I certainly associate with those condolences. Again, on a sad note, I'd like condolences be sent to a constituent of the family of a constituent of mine, Mr. Edward Ivan Stovall. There are many Ed Stovals, but he's Edward Ivan Stovall of Khyber Pass, and condolence. He was in his 91st year, in fact, And to his wife, Mary, and son, Ivan, I express my condolences as well. And on a more lighter note, Mr. Speaker, as we hear a lot of bad things about young people these days, there's a bright spot, a constituent, a person in my constituent, Mr. Sergio Lattimore, who has a great future in IB. He's been appointed as the VP of Credit at Hamilton Re, so I wish him all the best as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to make a contribution at this time? Minister Birch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd first like to send congratulations to Cobbs Hill Methodist Church on the occasion of the 197th anniversary a few weeks ago, Mr. Speaker. I attended this service. It's always a moving occasion to go to a church that was built by slaves at night. And the pastor, the current pastor, is Pastor G. Dean Smith, who does double duty between there and an Open Door Christian Fellowship in St. George's, in St. David's. And it was, as usual, a lengthy but moving service, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be associated with the condolences to Mr. Quentin Butterfield. And I'd also like to be associated with the condolences to my family of Kenneth Eric Alonzo Brangman, who is a first cousin of mine, Mr. Speaker. And it's amazing, you live on this earth for decades. I never knew that he had the full name of our maternal grandfather. And I always refer to my grandfather by his whole name because it's spelled Keys, Keas. He was a Smith. And the Deputy Speaker is quite correct that he spent and grew up on Napton Hill, as did most of us, because that's where our grandparents' homestead was and is. And so I extend condolences to my cousins. This is the second first cousin that's going in the space of 2 months, I think. Quentin being the first. And so I extend condolences to my Brangman cousins, my Woolwich cousins, my Bean cousins, and my Smith cousins. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Minister. MP Scott, Lawrence Scott.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, good morning. I just want to be associated with the congratulations for Mama D. I remember my first time going to the tuck shop at BI. There was a trio of brothers that made me pay a food toll. And I had to get a pizza pie for them. And
there's brothers in here today?
Mr. Speaker, I'll go on. I'll move forward. I'll go on to I would like to also be associated with the Cobbs Hill congratulations, as that is my home church. That's where I gave my first sermon. This is your captain speaking. I do tithe, and I tithe on gross, not net, right? This is your captain speaking. It was a sermon on faith. But so that has been my home church from as long as I can remember. So thank you for that, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP. Does any other member, MP Richardson, you have your 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, good morning to you and everyone else. Just 2 quick ones. I want to be associated with the condolences for Mr. Kenny Brangman. He actually stayed right down in Davos Hill there. And for me, it was every morning, just about every weekday morning, as I walked my dog, he'll be sitting there on the fence at the bus stop on his way. And he would actually be the one that would say, "Morning, Nate," and give me a story as to what had happened in the neighborhood in terms of if somebody had died or whatever took place. He knew, somehow he knew everything. And so I certainly want to extend my condolences. And I know that his service is going to be on Monday at 1 o'clock at St. Mark's. Mr. Speaker, on a huge positive note, I want to congratulate someone who is a young person, as one of the former members just spoke, that sometimes we complain so much about young people, but this young person is a female. She's very bold. She's developing into her own woman, I want to call it. And she is very much into the health sector. And I think she's going to be one of those persons in the future who is very much an advocate on behalf of females, especially in the health sector. She is very persistent. She is one who is prepared to push through any obstacles. And I will say that in many instances, the obstacle is me. And the reason why the obstacle is me is because she is my daughter, Jordan Adair Richardson. She turns 23 today. And one of the good things for her is that she and I had this real conversation because I am dating and she wanted to have a car. And she actually worked through time to convince me to buy her a car. And so Jordan, happy birthday today.
Does any other member wish to make a contribution at this time? Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to be associated with the condolences expressed by the honorable member for constituency number 33, and certainly to ask all honorable members be associated to for the family and friends of the late Sierra Brangman. I was in the UK when the news came in. It was incredibly shocking. Certainly, and of course, attending the student dinner later that evening, expressed condolences as there were a number of persons there who were her classmates and who knew from her work at the Barclay Institute. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to be associated with the remarks given by the honorable member for constituency number 12 on the 100th birthday celebration for Miss Lynch. Yes, I did get to attend on that day, and it was a wonderful celebration up there at the Mount Zion AME Church. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask the Honorable House to send a letter of congratulations to one of my constituents, a Mr. Ryan Day. Mr. Ryan Day recently won the Black Theater Award in the United Kingdom for Best Lighting Design. He was highlighted, and of course, we know that there are a number of young Bermudians that are in the art sector in the United Kingdom and in other places, and they are making their mark particularly, and I wanted to just make sure that I took the opportunity to recognize my constituent and congratulate him for his work in being recognized for this award in the United Kingdom. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Premier. Does any other member wish to make a contribution at this time? There are none other. Before we move on, I'd just like to add a couple of remarks to some of the comments this morning. And to Mr. Quentin Butterfield, I've known the family for probably as long as I can remember. They were, MP Liston mentioned the passing of Marlene Swan, my aunt, my cousin, and she was neighbors. They were neighbors growing up to Quentin's family. And so I've known them all my life going back. And Quentin, the son, and I are still very good friends. And Mr. Butterfield was looking forward to that 100th year, but time caught him just before. But he had very impactful. His life was very impactful to many around him. He was always very positive, very encouraging, and I used to look forward to my conversations with him. And my deepest sympathy goes out to his family at this time. They mourn his lossing. I'd like to be associated with the condolences expressed to the Ingham family and also to the Wilson family. Both Wilsons, in fact, Ciola's mom, Mrs. Wilson, and Mrs. Sylvia Wilson as well. And both will be missed by their families and community that they impacted upon. With that said, we'll now move on. The next item on the order paper is the matter of privilege. There are none. Personal explanations, there are none. Notice of motions for adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. There are none. Introduction of bills. There are none. That'll take us to there are no motions, so we go to the orders of the day, and it is, we've got time. We're going to do the first item on the orders of the day, which is the second reading of the Payroll Amendment Number 2, Act 2024. It's in the name of the Minister of Finance, and I think it's going to be led by Minister Furbert. Mr. Furbert?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the governor's recommendation, I move that the bill entitled the Payroll Tax Amendment Number 2 Act 2024 be now read the second time.
Any objections? There are none. Continue.
Mr. Speaker, the bill presented today before this honorable House is the Payroll Tax Amendment Number 2, Act 2024. And the purpose of the bill is to further harmonize and modernize the public service vehicle industry. Mr. Speaker, it is very important that we embrace efficiency in government tax collection. In our relentless pursuit of excellence, we must never underestimate the transformative power of efficiency. Especially in the realm of government tax collection, streamlining processes can yield profound benefits for both administrators and taxpayers alike. When we simplify and modernize our tax system, we create an environment that fosters transparency and fairness. By reducing complexity and eliminating unnecessary obstacles, we make it easier for individuals and businesses to comply with tax regulations, ultimately enhancing voluntary compliance. The introduction of clear tier structures and fixed tax rates is a shining example of how thoughtful reforms can lead to significant improvements. These measures not only reduce the administrative burden on taxpayers, but also allow our government to allocate resources more efficiently, effectively, ensuring that public services are well-funded and robust. Mr. Speaker, this is what this bill does. The bill introduced a new payroll tax system specifically for minibus owners. This revised system will feature a fixed payroll tax structure organized into 3 tiers based on the seating capacity of the minibus. Under this new framework, owners will no longer be required to engage in complex calculations or reconciliations to determine the payroll tax liability. Also, to streamline processes for the owners, the payment of the tax can be more simultaneously during minibus licensing period. The new tax system is structured as follows. Tier 1, minibuses with a seating capacity of up to 15 passengers will incur an annual payroll tax of $750. Tier 2, minibuses with seating capacity between 16 and 24 passengers will incur an annual payroll tax of $1,000. Tier 3, minibuses with a seating capacity of more than 24 passengers will incur an annual payroll tax of $1,500. Mr. Speaker, here's where the rubber meets the road. By doing this, Mr. Speaker, let me just say right now, the annual tax that we collect right now on minibuses is roughly $35,000 a year. By doing this, Mr. Speaker, the government will collect approximately $221,500. 600% increase. I emphasize, we currently collect about $35,000 in payroll tax. And the reason why, some do not pay their payroll tax. Some underestimate the payroll tax. So we estimate that roughly we were collecting $35,000. By doing this, Mr. Speaker, we'll collect $221,000 approximately dollars, a 600% plus increase annually. Mr. Speaker, the introduction of this simplified payroll tax system represents a step forward in improving the efficiency of the tax process within the public service vehicle sector by establishing a clear tiered structure based on seating capacity. The system removes the need for calculations, thereby facilitating easier compliance with tax regulations for minibus owners. This change not only brings tangible benefits to the operators by simplifying their tax obligation, but also enhances the overall transparency within the industry. The tiered approach ensures that the tax requirement is equitably distributed in line with the size of the vehicle, contributing to a more streamlined and efficient public service vehicle sector. This move will undoubtedly create greater compliance, provide clarity for owners, while we continue to facilitate a more orderly and transparent operating environment across the industry. Mr. Speaker, since we will be charging minibus payroll tax based on seats, it was felt that we also need to consider looking at taxi drivers. We're all aware that the average, well, not average, but taxi drivers is roughly 6 seats. So if we're charging $750 for a 15-seater, the government felt that we should only charge $600 for a taxi. Under the previous One Bermuda Alliance administration, taxi owners faced an average annual payroll tax of $3,000 in 2017. In 2019, the Progressive Labor Party took decisive action, reducing this tax burden to $1,000 per year. Now we are taking it a step further by reducing the payroll tax for taxi drivers from $1,000 to $600, representing an additional $400 reduction. Mr. Speaker, this means that since 2017, the payroll tax that the taxi drivers will have to pay is 80% less than 2017, going from $3,000 annually to roughly $600 a year. Mr. Speaker, this reduction is designed to ease the financial burden on taxi operators and help create a more balanced and equitable structure within the industry. This comprehensive approach not only improves the operational efficiency of the sector, but also generates a more inclusive and supportive environment for all operators. Ultimately, it contributes to the overall enhancement of the public service vehicle industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister Furbert. Does any other member wish to make a contribution to this?
Thank you,
MP Jackson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to say a few words. And in general, a decrease in any kind of tax is certainly something that is supported on this side, but I would like to just share a few comments. I'm going to begin, at first, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to sort of talk about how much the taxi industry in particular means to the history and legacy of Bermuda. And I wanted to focus on the fact that the taxi industry has provided and has certainly demonstrated during the pandemic that they are an essential service for Bermuda. They're very, very important and significant to our public service industry. And making the first immediate cut into this payroll tax confuses me, because if a government really cares about the integrity of this industry, I just don't understand why there's so much arbitration. The minister just mentioned in his brief that this is an age-old payroll tax. I personally don't even understand why it's called a payroll tax, because the tax is on a vehicle and not on individual people who are making an earning. So there doesn't seem to make any rhyme or reason between that. Now, it may be just something as simple as semantics. Either change the name of this payroll tax for taxi drivers and minibuses, or else can sit down and consider what exactly is a payroll tax for the public service industry. But that's up to government to make that decision. But what really upsets me, Mr. Speaker, is that the minister sits over there talking about how the previous governments have had this payroll tax and they charged $3,000 a year. Well, first of all, the taxi drivers may have been making more money back in those days, and therefore the $3,000 would be relative. They may now be paying less because they're not earning enough, but we'll leave that to the side, Mr. Speaker. But the worst part that really bothers me, and I've brought this up in the House before, Mr. Speaker, I do not understand why a Labor government continues to just copy these age-old laws, knowing that they're not relevant. They've got the wrong name. They're pinpointing the wrong thing. But yet they just can, instead of saying, okay, we're going to sit down and really figure this out, which I've been asking for years, figure it out. Look, take a big, long, comprehensive review of the public service vehicle industry and try to make it right. But instead, in this situation, all they've done is they've taken some I don't even understand what this payroll tax on a vehicle is all about, and just reduced it, arbitrarily reduced it. Well, you know what? And I stand on my own. My colleagues in the OBA may not agree with me, but just do away with the payroll tax for taxis altogether. Why even have it? It doesn't apply to payroll. And it's something that the UBP or somebody else came up with 50 years ago, and they're still hanging on to it. And it makes no sense, except for politics, because they get to say, oh, we're reducing a price. So we're going to leave that alone, park it to the side. Mr. Speaker, the taxi drivers were told in February of 2024 that this decrease in payroll tax was coming. The PLP, Minister of Transport, put it on the gov.bm. I think there's even a video to go with it, talking about how this payroll tax was going to be reduced from $1,000 down to $600. Crickets. We had the budget. We had the budget debate. We had all the legislation that was passed around the budget debate. We're now into March. Crickets, Mr. Speaker. And then September rolls around, which is the time when the taxi drivers start to renew their license, which might be a better term for this payroll tax. They get down to TCD and they have their $600 in their hand based on the government.bm big press release and published programs and cameras in action. And TCD said, absolutely not. No one has said a thing about reducing our payroll tax for taxis. So the taxi drivers going down there with the written expectation that there would be $600 charge for the payroll tax for September 1st of October deadline 2024, and they were told no, pay $1,000. So in actual fact, they have not only misled the taxi industry, but then they've also delayed the payment of this beautiful increase that, you know, is getting so much attention. So, Mr. Speaker, the taxi industry has now paid the $1,000, even though they were told in February of 2024 that there would be a decrease. In September of 2024, they all paid the $1,000. And now, Mr. Speaker, they're not going to get to realize that $400 reduction until next September, almost a year from now, Mr. Speaker. 9-10 months the taxi industry is going to have to wait to realize this reduction. And to be honest with you, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure that the industry is going to be able to afford the $600 when we get to October of 2025. Now, Mr. Speaker, this industry, aside from the fact that this is a significant historical and legacy industry for our country, and in particular, the service that they provide to the tourism industry, which has grown, by the way, Mr. Speaker, to some 800,000 projected for 2025. 800,000 visitors. That may just be on cruise ships. But, Mr. Speaker, they have had a limit on taxi permits since 1970, and this Labor government has done nothing to review that idea. And because of that 600 since 1970, there are so many taxis that are parked up somewhere, not being used, whether they're caught up in probate from the death of a family member, whether they're caught up in any other mechanical issues that haven't been resolved. The point I'm making, Mr. Speaker, is there are not enough taxis on this island, and the government has done absolutely nothing to address it. They may have 225 minibuses out there, but they're unregulated, Mr. Speaker. They're not a part of any kind of guideline. So they're probably being underutilized, and no one is asking them, how can we utilize these minibuses better? So, Mr. Speaker, we're in a hot mess. And you know what really bothers me? This is an industry for our Black, disenfranchised Bermudian males. The government has said that over and over again, because I've been sitting in this chair since the beginning. Mr. Speaker, This is an entrepreneurial opportunity for many, many people in Bermuda. And no one is doing anything to nurture it. They've been neglected. And Mr. Speaker, this is the one place where a human being, a Bermudian, can get behind the wheel of a car and have some dignity and have some entrepreneurial, independent ownership. And we've done nothing to address it. This is an opportunity, and we know, Mr. Speaker, you're from the generation of folks that drove taxi drivers and were more than happy to say that they had sent their children to private schools, that they had houses, apartments, living well. This was a major, you could make your own money. And none of that exists like it did from yesterday, today. None of it. There are taxi drivers out there required by law to drive their taxi for 16 hours a day. They can't take a break. They're supposed to take a 24-hour break once a week. They can't take that break because they've got to go out there and make the money. And they're not earning enough. And there's so much neglect from this government as far as organizing, setting policy, being actively involved.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
Hate to interrupt the wonderful honorable member. She was on, a roll. However, I would just like to point out to the honorable member that she is misleading the House and is factually incorrect. The law does not require any taxi driver to drive a vehicle for 16 hours a day. It requires a public service vehicle to be on the road for 16 hours a day. That is the law. She should make sure she corrects it before the view is that people are supposed to be driving 16 hours a day.
Point taken.
If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
The point was, let me just clear up so we don't go back and forth. The point was that the vehicle is regulated for 16 hours, not the driver.
Accepted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The vehicle must be on the road for 16 hours, but we're not necessarily enforcing or supervising or checking in on who's driving the vehicle for the 16 hours. And I'll leave it at that. But it brings me to another thought, Mr. Speaker. If a vehicle is on the road mandatory for 16 hours a day, I'm going to use that as my starting point. Where is the data? Where is the transport ministry collecting the data so that they know when a taxi is on the road, who's driving it, how many hours it's been driven? Because, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you remember, it was just a small little parliamentary question that I submitted some time ago asking about the reports from the dispatch companies that service the work to the taxi drivers. And I happened to have been caught up in an email trail that actually was the Ministry of Transport reaching out. This is after I have submitted my parliamentary question. Government, I happen to have been copied in on the email where government went out and asked the dispatch for the reports. So what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, is I don't believe anybody has been collecting any data on any taxi driver activity in Bermuda for some time, because that's a 6-month report. So we've got, I don't even know what dispatch we have, because I'm not quite sure how to define hitch. And, I don't know. And then we've got Bermuda Island, and they submit their reports with their data after they're asked, but not proactively, because nobody's doing anything with that data. So, Mr. Speaker, my questions to the minister are this. I wrote some of them down. Mr. Speaker, this is all about the data. We all are asking, I'm asking, why are we still having this payroll tax, just like a lump sum of the 1,000 reduced to 600? And that, to me, the introduction of the minibus tax is just offsetting the taxi. So there really isn't any loss to government whatsoever, but the minibuses now have to pay a tax in order to complement or supplement or tally up, so that government still gets their money, but now it's shared between the taxi operators and the minibus operators. So that to me sounds a little on the, I'll leave it at that. So regarding data, we would like to know what data is transport collecting to derive this payroll tax structure. We'd also like to know screen freeze. Not so we'd also like to know whether the government is collecting the dispatch data, the 6-month data, and where that data is being kept and how it is being formulated to help figure out the payroll tax. Does the government base tax on taxi by miles, hours driven, amounts earned? Whatever happens to the data that's supposed to come out of the analog meters once a year that shows the total sum of earnings and other statistics that come from the analog meters? Where has that data gone? Does TCD even still do that? And how are they using the data that is collected, whether it's from the meters, whether it's from the dispatch companies, for calculating any kind of tax? And it feels very awkward to say payroll tax, because that just doesn't seem to match with the vehicle, the meter, and the data from dispatch around the activities of the actual taxi driver and the work that they're doing.
MP, if you don't mind, do you have much more of your presentation? Because we are 12:30. Y'all want a good roll. I don't want to shut you down, but would you want to come back after lunch? Or
You know what? I'm gonna can I leave it there and come back after lunch?
Sure.
And then, yep. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that the Honorable House do now adjourn for lunch until 2 p.m.
Members, are there any objections to that? There are none. The House now stands adjourned until 2 p.m.